Okay, that's just
Okay, so it's Berkeley time, so I'm going to start the lecture now. This is lecture 5, JavaScript DOM, taught by me. So first, what is the DOM? Like, what is the document object model? It is a data structure that the browser will create when loading a page. So if you've taken 621B or anything, it's literally just a data structure. And it kind of has the structure of a tree. So it has elements and nodes, and it's made like each HTML tag is its own node, and the content is like the child node of each element. So for example, this is kind of like the structure of an HTML page and the DOM. So you see the HTML like first tag thing is the root node, and then the head and the body are like child nodes of that, and then like each node there is like child nodes of each other. And there's not like one set way to like define or like show this, but it's just the general structure is like a tree kind of data structure. And we can traverse this just like a tree data structure. We go down the DOM and kind of like in a parent-child relationship. And the main reason why we want to learn about the DOM is to use JavaScript to modify it. So basically we can use the DOM to change elements in their CSS. And we do this by selecting an element via JavaScript, and then we can change the style through that. And through this, we can add interactions like setting what happens when we check a checkbox or hover over something. We could also resize and transitions and a bunch of other stuff that we'll talk about later. And before we get into methods involving how to change the DOM and stuff, we need to know what the document actually is. So the document is a globally available variable. So it's like just built in to the browser, and it is used to modify the DOM and interact with the HTML and CSS. And there's a lot of methods that you can use for the DOM. And if you just like Google like DOM document, like JavaScript DOM documentation, there's a bunch of methods that you can see to how to modify and like select things. And it's actually, we won't get into this too much in the course, but it's actually a property of the window object, which represents a tab in the browser. And that window object has like a bunch of information about like the size of the browser and stuff like that. But what we're concerned about is the DOM, because that's what we're actually going to be editing. So now we can get into the methods that we use to actually select things and modify things. So the first one we're going to talk about is query selector. So this returns the first element that matches the CSS specified. So inside of those parentheses in the query selector, you put a valid CSS specifier. So that would be like a class name or an ID or even like a tag like div or p. And it allows us to modify the element's CSS, the element that we select, and its properties. So for example, in this red square example, we have this div that has the class name red square. And you see with CSS, we're changing the background color to crimson, but then using JavaScript, we can actually change the background color using JavaScript. And we do this by using document.querySelector. So you see that we're selecting the first element that has the class name red square. And just like a little note about query selector, because you can select like a class name or an ID or like a tag or like from like any CSS like property, we need to tell the code like which one we're selecting. So if we're selecting a class name, we have to put the period in front of the class name. If we're selecting an ID, it'll be like the hashtag or like number symbol. And if it's just like a like div or like p or something like a tag, you don't put anything. So basically this variable is now just pointing to this div right here. And so we can change the background color by using like .style.background color and change it to lime green. So if we actually like compile this code and like put it in the browser, the div would be lime green. And another way we can select elements is by document.getElementById. And this is basically the same thing as query selector, but instead of being able to select like class names or IDs or like anything, you can only use ID for this. And the reason you would do this over query selector is because it's faster. And also you don't have to worry about like putting the hashtag or like period in front of the ID name, because all you're ever going to select using this is IDs. So you just put the string of the ID inside of parentheses. And yeah, for example, it's just document.getElementById, and then we're assuming there's like some HTML like div or something with the ID demo. And so that's selecting that element. And then we can change the inner HTML, which is basically like if you have like a div or something and you like put text inside of it. And like if you load it in the browser, it'll like say that text, right? Inner HTML basically changes what that text says. So whatever like this div would be, or like whatever this element would be, now like the text of that would be hello world. Does that make sense so far? Okay. So what can we do with this? We've already talked about inner HTML and style. Style would just be like any CSS style. So it'd be like .style.background color or like .style.color or like .font or something. And then we can also change the element's class name using JavaScript. So if we do like query selector or whatever, .class name, we would like .class name equals and then like some class name, we would actually change the class name of that element. And there's also just more elements. If you like Google it, there's like a ton of them you can do. And some other methods. Two of them are get elements by class name and get elements by tag name. These two return arrays. And basically it selects like all of the elements in your HTML that have that specific class or that specific tag, and it returns an array of all of those elements. And this is useful if you want to like loop through all of those elements and like change parts of like each one of them. And you can also create an element using this by using the create element method and tag. So basically that tag would just be like div or p or something. That would just create a new div for p. Okay, so here's a demo. Oh, yeah. And also sometimes if you click on like a button or something and you want a new div to show up, you can do that because you can't really do that with like just HTML. Hopefully you can see that. But so basically just to demo query selector and get element by ID, say that we want to like change the text of like that blue body one tag or that blue body like element. We could select that by using query selector because that blue body one thing is the H1 with the class blue text. So what we could do is we could do like const body one equals document dot query selector and then wait, what? Turn off. Oh, the lights. I don't know how to turn off the lights here. If there's like oh, not very good with kind of stuff. I have no idea what's going on here. Can you guys like still kind of see it? Is it like visible at all? Okay. I guess if you don't know what's going on, just like ask, I guess. And there's also going to be recordings. Sorry about that. So since it's a class name for query selector, we need to put a period in front of the class name. So the class name is blue text. So basically body one is now just pointing to that H1. And so if we do body one dot inner HTML, we can just like decide what we want the text of that to be. So we could do like something like that. And then body one dot inner HTML. And now we change the text of that H1 that used to say body one to JavaScript DOM is the bomb using JavaScript. And so we could also use get element by ID. If you see the introduction thing right there, it has the ID introduction. So we can actually select that element using get element by ID. So we can say const intro equals document get element by ID. And since we're just getting it by the ID and like it's always going to be the ID, we don't need anything in front of it. So we can do introduction because that's the idea of it. And then if we want to maybe like make the text of introduction like more legible because it's really ugly right now, we should do like intro.style.color equals like white or something. And if we save that, now you see that the introduction text is now white. And we just did that by selecting that element and then changing the color of it through that. So as I kind of mentioned before, we can modify multiple elements at once. So we can modify them using a loop and taking advantage of the methods that return arrays. So in this example, it's just an unordered list that has a bunch of list items that all have the class JS target. And inside the JavaScript, we're like creating an array basically of all of the elements that have the class name JS target. And so because it's an array, now we can loop through it all. And then for each like element inside of there, we're just changing the inner text to modified by JavaScript. So basically what's happening in this is that all those elements, instead of saying unchanged now, are just going to say modified by JavaScript because we selected them all and then changed the inner text of them all. All right, so events and listeners. So basically events are like when certain things happen on a page. So for example, if you click on a button or you like type in like some input, or even if you like hover on an image or something, that's an event. And listeners are what we use to like basically tell like when an event happens. So we respond to these events by having event listeners. And these event listeners run whenever like the event specified happens. So for example, a demo. So if we have like an input or something, and we put the class name of like, I don't know, input, and then we put like placeholder text to type here. And then we have like a p tag that says nothing has happened yet, with the class name of like p-copy. And so in our script tag, we can select this input element and then actually like add an event listener to it. So equals document dot query selector input. And then if we want something to happen when we type in this into this input, actually I should probably show what it's doing. So yeah, you can see we basically have an input and then the p tag, nothing has happened yet, because nothing has happened yet. And so we could do input dot add event listener, and then we can listen to if like when there's a key up. So that basically means just whenever you type into the text box of the input, this function that we're gonna make is gonna fire. So in this function, if we could like change the text of that p. So first we would have to select the p so we can like select it and then change the inner HTML of it. So okay, so now we have p copy as a variable in our JavaScript. And so now we can change the inner HTML of it. So we can say p copy dot inner HTML is equal to input dot value. So this will basically set p copies like text inside of it to be whatever text is inside of this text box, and it'll update p whenever you change something in that text box, or like whenever you like have a key pressed in that text box because that's what we added the event listener for. So if we like type here like that, you see that it changes the text of that key right there. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Can you write the function using the arrow thing that's similar to already understand?
Oh yeah. That should also work. Yeah. All right, so that was kind of a demo on how to use event listeners. And another way you could do this is using inline event handlers that do the same thing as adding an event listener, just like the way that we just did it. But you can only assign one event at a time. So basically just see what I'm talking about. This is the way that we just did it. So that we have a button and then we like select it by get element by ID from the ID button. And then we add an event listener that listens for when the button is clicked. And then whenever it's clicked, that function will fire and it'll alert you that you clicked on the event, or you clicked on the button. And an inline event listener would look like this. And so basically it gives the button an attribute on click and then sets that to whatever function you have like inside your script tag or like inside your JavaScript. So in this case, you name the function my function. And so you have a my function in the JavaScript, and then that function, like one called alerts the same thing. You clicked on the button. But in this case, you're not like typing out like add event listener, you're just putting on click my function. But the drawback is that if you want to also have like an on hover, like a function that happens like when you hover on the button or something, you can't do that with an inline event handler because you can only have one. And if you try and put another one, it'll just like override the one before it. All right, so event delegation. Basically, since it's a tree kind of data structure, the DOM, when you like, when an event handler, like when the event like it listens and it like sees that you like clicked something or whatever, it moves like down the tree and then like back up. So basically whatever like your parent node is, if like something happens there, it'll like show up on the other elements, if that makes sense. So basically, as you see, it just like it goes down and then it goes back up, just like a tree. And to just demo this, what if we had like a button that said click me with the class, or we could do ID, I guess, or we'll do class. If we wanted to, oh wait, yeah, and if we had like a bunch of these buttons, if we wanted to like have an event listener for each one of these, we'd have to like manually go and like loop through all of them and then like add an event listener to all of them, which is kind of tedious and also like not very necessary if we want the same like thing to happen when we click on each of those buttons. So instead, we can put them all inside of a div. And we can just have a class for this. That's like container. And so basically, if we put an event listener on this div for like on click or something, then for each of these buttons, it will also like do the same. It'll like have the function fire for like each of these buttons because of event bubbling, basically, because it's the buttons are like children of this div. So the event will like it'll like bubble up. So if we did that, it would be, we'd have to select this div. So const container equals document query selector container, I think. And then we could do container dot add event listener. And this time we're going to be watching for a click. So whenever someone clicks on it, this function will fire. And maybe we could do like each time you click on it, it'll make an alert that says you clicked on like that. And so if you then click on any of these, then it'll say that. And if you don't understand what happened just there, basically we have added an event listener to listen to on click for that div container that contains all of the button elements. And so for the add event listener, like the function, we can actually pass in like the event. You don't have to, but if you want to use like the actual event that happens, then you can pass that in. And basically what we're doing there is event.target.inner text. It's basically like the event would be the click. And so the click's target, which would be whatever button you just clicked, and the inner text of that button. So, well, for all of these buttons right now, it's click me. If we like changed it, like 1, 2, 3, 4, you can see that like each time we click on it, maybe you can't see, or okay, never mind, it doesn't. But it says you clicked on 5 when you click on the button that says 5 on it, and you clicked on 3 when you click on the button that says 3. So basically, that event.target, the inner text would just be whatever text is in your button, and the target is like the button itself. So then it just alerts you've clicked on whatever button you've pressed, and we don't have to add an event listener to each button because of event bubbling. That the container like encapsulates all of those buttons, and so it like kind of like bubbles down, and then you can like bubble back up, and it'll like still have that same event. But, like it'll have that data of the event they can use. All right, so that's basically like the lecture. It's pretty short, but just a side note for like the future, I guess, or if any of you guys have learned React or any other framework, what we just did was vanilla JS. But if you ever like use React or like any of those industry tools, you won't actually be like manipulating the DOM like the way we did right then. But we thought it would be important to like know what was going on and like how to actually manipulate the DOM like manually, because it makes it a lot easier to understand like what frameworks are actually doing, and like to like actually know what's going on in those frameworks. And also I think a lot of companies like interview in vanilla JS as well, so you might have to still use vanilla JS even if they don't, like you used React or like Next or something. So yeah, and just some announcements. Homework 2 is due today. If you have questions, you maybe post on Ed, and you can also ask me right now. And for the Project One personal website is due on February 24th. So yeah, that's the lecture. Thank you for coming. And yeah. Okay. Oh yeah, the attendance word is unicorn. It's unicorn. Yeah, the attendance word is unicorn. Yeah, all lowercase. Yeah.
Can I ask something real quick, not technical? Do you know if the MacBook case that was posted this year had a similar round? Sebi posted it like last round.
Sebi posted it? I don't know where.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
No worries. I think it's on there.
You can ask him about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then in those two classes,
I was wondering, so I like was copying the stuff during lecture. So if I save it this way, only the top doesn't work. Like this works, but this doesn't work. That, like, this box is on top, it's called one. That one works. And, the copy one doesn't work.
Like all of your JavaScript into one script tag, and like all of your stuff.
Oh, okay.
I think if you don't get like.
like instead of doing one of these elements,
Thank you.
then make the boxes. So I'm just gonna mess around with all of these things. I thought it was here. This way, using one class boxes. When I do that, there's I'm setting the margin or setting set up the same as these two up there. And I feel like there's something wrong with this because I can't just adjust this at all. Using like the line style, just like that. I want to put on the glass. So there you go. Yeah, like that's where like was I think just a try and hopefully this works. It's very hard though. So yes, there is patterns, but it's.
But what I did was, if I did working, and then.
Thank you. Is this okay? I don't know if the lead of the problem is like the same, does that matter? Or not really? Like because it may not be exactly the way
I think
it's okay. Then I was having this issue with my margin, what was my box? With my HTML. I changed the class to fly on fly two, right, because that's what it says in the CSS. But it's not really changed. I don't know if it's wrong or wrong.
Since it's supposed to kind of like you're in the middle of I think for the. For the HTML.
Yeah.
When it comes to, it should go flag. And then stays flag.
Oh, because it's so. How do you know they're embarrassing?
This.
It says like that.
But like just from the notation of the color notes.
From the notation?
Yeah, because it just looks the same as.
Oh, yeah. It's kind of. I guess it's just like.
Yeah.
It is like a flag, so. You want to have the same properties. The style of the flag.
It's slightly off the margin.
Yeah.
Like this is what I've done for my. I just put like a margin of temperatures.
Yeah, I think that's fine because. Because you're adding the margin, it will just like automatically.
Yeah, so it's okay.
Yeah, it's.
Just fine, spend everything, some type of.
Yeah.
And then this pattern can also.
Yeah.
That's what you do. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, I just have a. So, I was building CSS, right? Yeah, it's not like a thing. I was trying to make like a menu bar, like, it's like this kind of. And this is the profile. It's like a little distance and it's off, which is really annoying me. So I don't understand. I made like a little message div. So it's not near that. Okay. And then also, how do I like learn JavaScript? Like, I know you like taught a lot of stuff, but I feel like the only way for me to like learn is to get like hands-on stuff. So how would you recommend like learning that? I guess I can do the website. I feel like that site is more complicated than just building a website.
Yeah.
How do you learn that?
This is simple, but it's really important.
I've seen, yeah.
That's how it was.
Okay.
And I think.
It was good.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think setting also helps do that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Because I might, I don't know if this is. I was just wondering. This is how I know.
Or.
It's like this where I gave it. For
One, like I said, margins. Interesting. This is one hand, like, so that's what it's.
But I think something that was just exciting and margin. Because if you just set margins, you won't see. Just do a margin. Left, right,
I remix it.
Like that.
Yeah.
And,
Or just get out of
and then for my adding, is this okay? I want you to add one just in office hours. He said he's pretty pretty. But he hasn't like. He's really just like modest, so like, this is what, he said it was okay. with me. I noticed like, is this a big one?
Yeah.
So I realized I made a mistake, so then I pushed, and then I like went to my original URL and it wasn't like changing. So then I unpublished my page and now I'm kind of building this. But I'm not this. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Oh, so sorry. I'll just put some- Yeah. What's that supposed to be? Probably said my name. Okay. Okay. I'm sorry.
I went.
Every time you submit the URL on Gradescope will get updated, right? Like, we don't have to generate a new URL,
Yeah, I think so.
like the URL in the README.
Yeah,
So, oh, other, here's what makes, it's just only this part.
I'm gonna what? Is that how you pursue? I like.
There's some spaces in that.
Try all of them.
Wide everywhere.
Like, it's all coming.
Like you do this display sometimes.
Yeah, that's the trouble. The guys that were doing it up and down.
So, just go to your system now. Yeah, so I think I know how to do. So you want to picture. Then I will shoot on. When certain things with us, but like, so this is a secret. I don't have to speaking. This is lecture, it's new style. This is probably the most responsible. So doing the HTML.
I'll connect it to this side.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go to the side.
Yes. In the building, yes. But I don't know, like, I think it's the one that I know is downstairs. But it's like nobody copies. The water looks, you know. Looks like
It's like something like more really long. Like initially this was my local file on my computer. And then I deleted parts of it and you can see that.
I think it is getting into.
It's getting to file, but I think it's getting to my directory. So like it goes to like local, so like local files,
Yeah.
my user,
Yeah.
downloads, and then all my computer instead of go into the tab itself of secret.html.
I think that's fine, but the secret HTML is like the file. Like, is it good? What is it? Trying to find something in here. If we're looking for like the HTML inside, then we see what type. I'm also have no idea what the spec is.
So you said like H2 to which part?
Just like any part of it.
Like this is a secret message.
Yeah.
Okay, let's try that, see if I can follow.
I don't know why the private school is showing lines for people. And any, from what I can see, it has been pushed, so. Yeah, as in. Yes. This, yeah.
I think we get the pages on the top.
Like, wasn't. Like when it was.
If you have like a weapon or that could show that it's not like a possible.
I'm going to leave it. This one? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and you know it already now. It says. Did you do this part of the?
It was that,
Oh, yes. Because I'm just having the bush. This probably one. Yes.
Okay.
I just have one.
yeah, that's
No, it. I'll give you my. Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I think we will have this in progress.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got the annual person. Yeah,
So we need to come up with this.
Yeah, so. To be inclusion, music,
Okay, and then something.
yeah.
My example, that I should get. I did the main and root and save it. And then. I think it's dash. I can't delete it. Oh.
This is gonna ask like simple question. Usually when I get an assignment, I just give occasional and then copy this thing. But I was going through my notes and I think they did like more add origin, which did add, and then, you know. So what's like the difference between those like clone and add origin?
So given I'm getting started, I'm not sure if Git clone automatically does.
This one, that's my last sentence, which is Git clones.
I think.
Also for the personal website project, is it like, does it have to be audio or can it do it? Website?
Anything you want.
I'm just a website, it doesn't have to be a book. Thanks for the.
It should be the same attendance link as always.
Yeah, I think.